if by Holy Spirit, if you're talking about spirits, it depends exactly what you mean by spirits. We have spirit, by the way, which is more like disposition. So if you're talking about human spirit, the way you are, your disposition, your mood, then that dies with you because you're not alive when you're dead. So spirit, if you were talking about God, of course, that's forever. God cannot die. So the word spirit itself can be tricky. You read about the spirits in prison in First Peter 3, and those spirits there are fallen angels. And I've been saying over the years the word spirits, unqualified. I don't mean the spirit of just men made perfect, but if you just say spirits as a class of individuals, you always mean either demons or angels. I don't know if that helps, but spirit in connection with God, of course, is forever. God has immortality, always has had it. So there's one verse that we'll just throw into discussion. It's 1 Thessalonians 4:17. If you read that carefully before you get to Corinthians, you'd do better. 1 Thessalonians 4:17, when he's described the second coming and our resurrection being caught up to meet the Lord as he comes, he says, this is how we will get to be with Jesus. If that doesn't settle the issue, I don't know what would. You want to know how we're going to be with Jesus? That's 1 Thessalonians 4:17. By this manner, by this process, we get to be with Jesus. That's beautiful for me. Very, very clear.
If we're saying that spirit is eternal, and we're talking here about human spirit, I think we say spirit or power. If you begin to realize, well, wait a minute, this is something that comes into existence by God, and he does this, then it's not a human being that we are receiving or a human being we're losing when the spirit is leaving us, that life force, as Greg said. So indeed, if you say it's eternal, I'm not quite sure what that means. Do you mean that that's a person out there who comes to us to begin with and gives us life, that we then are that spirit or breath power person? If you mean that, I don't think that makes any sense. But if you want to say spirit is our breath, it's power that God gives us energy and life, I don't know. As it applies to us, I guess it's not eternal unless God actually causes it again to re-enter our bodies and reanimate us in resurrection.
Whenever the word spirit occurs in the text anywhere, context always determines its meaning. It has a variety of meanings. And certainly, if the questioner means is God's eternal spirit eternal, God does call himself a soul many times. My soul, it's the Lord's soul, and his spirit is eternal. But when we come to human beings, we've already indicated that we are not God, and we are different to God, clearly, because we have corporeality. We have a combination of body and spirit, or God's life breath in us. It's interesting. In my Immortal Soul days, I used to believe that the brain was the instrument through which your eternal spirit operated and worked or functioned. The brain, in other words, was just the physical receptor from the deeper soul or eternal spirit that dwelt within. Now, when I became involved in the medical sciences, the inconsistency of this really hit me. And certainly after I read something by Sid Hatch, we'll talk about him maybe later in our recommended readings. But Sid asked a question, and I did in my medical days, if my real self is a soul that continues to think after death, why does a lesser thing such as a blow to my head render my soul unconscious? In other words, when you're unconscious, you have no consciousness, obviously. So is this immaterial entity that we call soul subject to a knockout blow from a material instrument, rendered inoperative by death, a far bigger event, and by violence, when a lesser blow to the head takes away our consciousness? It just shows you that the soul is not an independent entity working through the brain, and therefore is not eternal.